As I discussed in The Origin of a Chinese Ghost Story, Tsui Hark always remakes the films he loves. The Blade is no exception, but the original version he remade was already a remake itself. To trace its true origin, we must return to one of the founding fathers of modern Wuxia, Jin Yong, the man who made Wuxia great again. Our TV channels constantly aired adaptations of his novels. We've all seen at least 2 different versions of the same story, but before the pixels and wire work, there was the ink. In the age of martial arts novels, Jin Yong was the master we read most. Return of the Condor Heroes remains his most famous work in Asia, largely because the high-tech era of Wuxia TV began with its prequel, Legend of the Condor Heroes, in 2003. When the sequel, Return of the Condor Heroes, was released in 2006, it became incredibly popular. Jin Yong's influence on Wuxia cinema is as massive as Pu Songling's influence on supernatural fantasy. You can watch about Pu Songling in Origin of a Chinese Ghost Story. Director of The One-Armed Swordsman, 1967, was Chang Che. He was a contemporary of King H. He even directed a sequel to King Hu's Come Drink With Me. But their styles were completely different. Chang Che was famous for his violent, visceral martial arts films. The script was written by Ni Kuang, who was close friends with Jin Yong. He even shadow-wrote parts of Jin Yong's novels. I mention this for a specific reason, which I'll get to later. In The One-Armed Swordsman, the hero is clearly the character Yang Guo from the 2nd volume of Jin Yong's Condor trilogy, Return of the Condor Heroes. He has his arm cut off by his benefactor's daughter. Bleeding and armless, he floats away in a river, or he left from his master, and he was rescued by a girl living in a secluded, unknown corner of the world. There he discovers a secret, powerful martial arts manual. His weapon is a broken sword. In the end, he saves his master and fellow students from a villain seeking revenge from a distant land. After that, he disappears back into seclusion. This is exactly Jin Yong's Yang Guo character. The sequence of events is a bit different due to runtime. One might argue that a broken sword and a heavy sword are different, but in concept, they are the same. They both represent a rejection of the typical sword's qualities: thinness, sharpness, and stability. It is a symbol that transcends the path of the ordinary swordsman. This Yang Guo copy was incredibly successful, making the lead actor Jimmy Wang Yu a superstar. The story was just that good. Why did they copy the character so directly without taking it officially from Jin Yong? Perhaps to avoid paying licensing fees. However, since Ni Kuang was Jin Yong's friend, there were no legal issues, though people did criticize it at the time. Regardless, it was a massive hit, even leading to a crossover with Zatoichi and many sequels. A bit later, Jimmy Wang Yu had a falling out with Shaw Brothers and left. In 1971, Chang Che remade it as the new One-Armed Swordsman featuring David Chiang and T. Lung. David Chiang played the one-armed hero. The new One-Armed Swordsman is quite different from the original One-Armed Swordsman. This version felt more like an original story filled with iconic scenes. The choreography and fight sequences were more unique. Even though it was a remake, it was a more beautiful film. Our people loved this movie back then. Its impact was immense. One-Armed Swordsman also had a long history in our culture. Legendary poet Thuka Main Hleng once wrote about it in the preface of one of his poetry books' prologue. In the One-Armed Swordsman movie, after the young martial artist loses to a cunning master, he keeps his word and cuts off his own arm. Then he throws his sword into his severed arm as it flies through the air. The sword pins the arm to a tree. The film then shows the changing of the seasons over that sword-pinned arm. That scene stayed with me forever, reminding me of the life of a poet like that severed arm pierced by a blade while the spring, rain, and winter of life pass us by. One-Armed Swordsman is Shaw Brothers' version of Yang Guo. The Blade mixed it with a non-Asian style because it is Tsui Hark. Tsui Hark is known as the Steven Spielberg of Asia. He always made innovations. His innovation always matched Chinese culture plots with Western-style cinema techniques. For me, The Blade is entirely diverse from Chinese or Hong Kong Wuxia cinema. It is more like a Western. Maybe he is the opposite of Tarantino. In Kill Bill, Tarantino used a Western setup with Chinese culture. In The Blade, Tsui Hark used an Eastern setup with non-Eastern elements. The Blade is not real Wuxia. In contrast, Jin Yong's Jianghu was a professional society where heroes and anti-heroes lived within the corners of actual history. While most characters were fictional, his stories were grounded in historical fact, allowing him to portray his heroes' chivalry throughout the ages. So, was the Jianghu just fiction? Not entirely. Some of the sects mentioned are real and still exist today. Historical figures like Wang Fei Hung and Huo Yuanjia were real martial artists, as was Ip Man. The portrayal of the Jianghu in Wong Kar-wai's The Grandmaster is perhaps the most prominent example of this. Jin Yong is famous for his research data. He found some supernatural things about martial arts like qi in the old scripts. What he made us believe is that in a much earlier age, people knew more about martial arts. His novels highlighted this fact too. The heroes in the novel's set in earlier ages are more powerful. His last novel, set in the nearest era, features Wei Xiaobao, who doesn't even practice kung fu. Jianghu is not a separate place. It is like what we call a film society or a writer's society. It is a world within the real world. The real source of one-armed swordsman and the blade, Yang Guo, lived in that kind of Jianghu. In the one-armed swordsman version, they could only portray one martial arts school and one villain. In a Jin Yong novel, it is never just one villain. Sometimes the villain is not the real villain. The real villains in his novels are the foreign attacks. One-armed swordsman used elements of Yang Guo, some of his mindset, the one arm, the person who cut it off, the irregular sword, and the orphan. But in Jin Yong's version, the sword is just too heavy, not a broken sword. It portrays the burden of the heroes of that era. The Blade uses Jin Yong's source material, which was only hinted at in One-Armed Swordsman, the revenge for his father. The Blade used the same old broken sword of the One-Armed Swordsman, but with a little improvement. That isn't all. The blacksmith workshop setting wasn't new either. In Return of the Condor heroes, there was a blacksmith named Feng Mo Feng, whose tragic fate broke the audience's hearts. However, what Tsui Hark defines as Jianghu in The Blade is far from the traditional version. It was more like Western. He used blacksmith workshop as matrial art school. Even using all these Chinese literature elements, Tsui Hark can still portray it like a Western movie. He also modernized King Hu's iconic glimpse editing style, employing rapid cuts and rhythmic movement. His characters are gravity-defying swordsmen who move faster than the eye can follow, taking what King Hu started to a new level. He even pays homage to the legendary bamboo forest sequence from A Touch of Zen, but renders it in a much darker tone. It's clear that Tsui Hark never forgot the influence of King Hu. That is no surprise. He always makes innovations, but he still keeps the culture as a bridge. Thanks for watching Bird with No Legs. Subscribe for more cinema essays.